What's going on, everybody? So, some of you might be wondering what the hell has happened to my mycology projects. I've been a little busy lately, and ultimately, I just turned the furnace on in my house a few weeks back, and it's been a little chilly. So, growth has been a little slow. Um, I had sterilized some grain in myco bags. So, what happened about 3 weeks ago when I pulled my myco bag out of the storage container that I had it put away in? I was getting ready to do what's called a break and shake. So, about half the bag was colonized with my mycelium, and I grabbed the bag and I started shaking it up to mix it all up, and the bag busted open. I had 5 pounds of corn all over my kitchen. All I could do was just stand there, and it's just like, fuck, just fuck. So I had to start over. Not from scratch, because I had my agar dishes completely colonized and I did not use them all. So what I did is I took one of my colonized blue oyster agar cultures, cut it up into tiny little pieces, and shoved it into a mason jar that I had pressure cooked with my grains. I hydrated and sterilized my grain, and now I have a fully colonized mason jar filled with grain. So what I'm going to do with this, and since I got the furnace turned on in my house, the mycelium is growing a lot faster. It doesn't like growing below 70 degrees. At least the blue oysters don't. Some like cooler temperatures. Some like warmer temperatures. The mycelium for the blue oysters, and they prefer to grow around 70 degrees. But when I put it into fruiting conditions, that can be as low as freezing. I've seen blue oysters grow in wintertime. When I first got my blue oyster culture, I did not know that they were colder temperature mushrooms, and I tried growing them in the middle of summer. And I had a 5-gallon bucket full of substrate, completely colonized, and I spent months with this bucket in fruiting conditions, but what I didn't realize is the fruiting conditions were too warm. So when that wasn't working out, I dumped the 5-gallon bucket out in my backyard. Well, a few months later, the temperature started to drop, get down to around 45, 50 degrees at night. And the next thing you know, that big block of mycelium, colonized substrate, started throwing fruits out. And then I had what I was going through this past summer with my yellow oysters, the one that I was picking wild. I was fighting off the insects, and they were winning. So now I know better. Blue oysters are a colder climate mushroom, which is perfect because we're just coming into winter here. My basement stays pretty chilly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shake this thing up and colonize other grain jars that I have ready to go. So this blue oyster mycelium, it's hardy, it's healthy, and it's fast growing now that the conditions are proper in my home. So I should have an updated video on this one in about a week. I'm going to show you something. Hold on one second. All right, so check this out. This is another kind of mushroom that I'm not talking about yet because this is my first time trying to grow these. Once I figure out the tech, I'll talk about this one later. But this jar is just about fully colonized. Almost. Can't see it that well. But yesterday, what's today? No, today is, yeah, it was yesterday. Okay. So yesterday I took one of these fully colonized jars and added it to some other jars that I had ready to go, and they were not fully colonized. And if you can see, the mycelium's already starting to take off. Let me see if I can get a flashlight so you can get a better look. Alright, so it's not working out real well. But this one, it's pretty much white. And these ones, you see little white specks in there? Those are the grains that I dumped in yesterday that have already started to spread out and colonize the rest of it. So this should be ready to go in about a week, 2 tops. And the same is going to hold true with the blue oysters. I seem to be doing a decent job. Now, something I did wrong before with my blue oysters is one of the people that helped me grow, learn how to grow, they had recommended using pickling lime to balance out the pH. But because I use well water, and they were saying that the pH in my well water probably isn't perfect, so I should start adding some the pickling lime to my my grain when I sterilize them. But that was a bad idea. My psyllium wasn't growing out very well when I added the amount of pickling lime that they told me to. So what I did was I eliminated it altogether, and it seems to be growing just fine. So forget the pickling lime. One of these days I'll make another updated video on how to properly hydrate and sterilize the grain with the mason jars. It's a lot easier than the myco bags. I was trying to cut corners. I was trying to be lazy, and I could fit more grain in a myco bag than I can in my mason jars. But I think the mushrooms were trying to tell me they don't want to grow in plastic. So, fuck that plastic. It's no good. And once you start, I know this might sound like some hippy-dippy bullshit, but once you start becoming in tune with the mushrooms, you start hearing what they're saying to you, and you better listen if you want to successfully work with them. So they're here for us, we're here for them. Another perfect example of a symbiotic relationship. Yeah, man. All right, so time to start moving with my grain transfers. And once again, once I start my grain transfers, I'm not going to be talking. Bacteria, germs come from the mouth, and right now these are completely sterile. And if I speak, anything comes from my breath into the grain jar, that's what's going to colonize the grain jar. And I don't want that. Nothing but white, healthy mycelium. That's what we're looking for. One of these days, I'm sure I'm going to be able to show you some bacteria. I hope it's a long, long time. Or not only bacteria, but trichoderma, mold. As long as I continue to do a good job, I'm not going to be able to show you. But one of these days, something is going to go wrong. It's going to happen, whether I continue to do a fantastic job or not. Trichoderma, bacteria, it's unavoidable. So one of these days I'll show you what that looks like, but hopefully it's going to be a really long time. Alright, so all of the jars you see sitting over here, those have already been cleaned. This one was just sitting with me at my bar, so I got to wipe that off again. And I got to get gloves. And from this point on, I got to stop talking. Well, as soon as I get this jar wiped down is when I need to stop speaking. Okay, we got everything covered back up, sealed back up. The reason the lid is on upside down on all of my jars is because if I tip it over, it will seal. When I pressure cook them, I turn the seals upside down and I cover the lid with foil here so moisture doesn't creep back down into the jar. But mycelium, they like CO2. It produces CO2, and as it's colonizing the grain, it likes high CO2 content, but it still needs to have what's called FAE, which is fresh air exchange. So now that I got everything dumped in right up on top, I'm gonna twirl it around in circles, and you'll see the grain is starting to make its way to the bottom. When I first got into the hobby and I was a part of, well, I'm still a part of it, but when I was active on this other website that I was on a lot, I'd go on there making, comments saying it's not easy to get the agar or the bits of grain being transferred over to the bottom. And one day I figured it out, and I went on saying, it takes that certain kind of flick of the wrist, if you know what I mean. The gentlemen know what I mean. Just making stupid jokes. The people who run that site, the ones who created the site, I'm not convinced they appreciate my sense of humor. Fuck them if they can't take a joke, right? No, I don't mean that. I don't want to make anybody mad. So this is grain to grain transfer. You get one jar that's fully colonized. You get a couple jars ready and completely sterilized. And again, as I'm working this around, I can see the little pieces of white colonized grain working their way to the bottom. Now you probably can't, and I apologize for that, but you're going to have to take my word for it. It's mixed up thoroughly all throughout this grain jar. But yeah, grain jars are the way to go instead of the myco bags. Again, I can get a lot more done in a myco bag at one time, but I am not having that shit happen again. Having my bag bust open all over my floor set me back probably 6 weeks. Now, if I was doing things in the right environment in the first place, it wouldn't have taken that long. But I didn't create the warm spot in my home until I turned my furnace on. So I'm going to take this jar, and I got a lot more jars to knock up. So I'm going to do a lot more grain transfers. I'm going to mark these. As soon as I find a Sharpie, I'll mark them BO for blue oyster, and then G2G. That tells me I did a grain to grain transfer, and then I'll put today's date. And in another week or two, these will be ready to colonize some substrate. For the oysters, I am going to be running with straw. Just straw. And pasteurizing the straw is super easy. Again, all I need is pickling lime, and it is necessary for pasteurizing straw. So yeah, I will make an update tomorrow or 2 days from now and add it to this video. And I'll show you the progress as it's going along. A piece of old agar. I don't know if you can see that in here. A little slice, that's agar that dumped out of this jar, but that's okay because it's still colonized with mycelium. So everything that little piece of agar touches inside the jar, it's going to drop mycelium on it. And it's going to colonize real fast for me. Alright, I'll have an update for you in just a moment. First I gotta put, I'm gonna put today's date on here and mark all these and get a whole bunch of others knocked up and ready to go. Ultimately, I want a lot of grain for my oysters. You can't put too much grain in a bucket. You can put too little, I suppose, but you can't put too much. So, yeah. All right, I'll be back. All right, it's a moment of truth. 24 hours later. Let's see how we're looking. I see some good things happening here. Today's the 6th. That's a good thing. That's after 24 hours. Let's see what some other ones look like here. Something else I'm looking for is green mold, trichoderma. Hey, check that out. That's a lot of growth after 24 hours. That's pretty damn good. Yeah. So I finally got it right. Number 1, no myco bags. Number 2, I think I said pickling lime earlier, but I meant to say, shit, what did I use? Not pickling lime. It'll come to me. Here's another one. I got too many powders for too many different hobbies and I'm getting them confused. Pickling lime is going to come later. Yeah, it is pickling lime. I think. Hold on a second. I'll be right back because this is going to bother me now. Gypsum. That's what it is. It was recommended to me to use gypsum in my grain to help balance out the pH. However, it was a bad idea. It was bad advice. I got well water, which is why they recommended it, because they said the iron would throw off the pH. But yeah, I have heavily mineralized water and it seems to be doing just fine. So yeah, this is after 24 hours and I think they look fantastic. Again, I'm also looking for trichoderma. The grain to grain transfers colonize jars much faster, because every piece of corn that was colonized that I dumped in there, as I shook it up, every time it hit a piece of corn, a small piece of mycelium would stick to that piece of corn that it touched, and that would colonize that piece. Blue oyster grows so fast, super hardy, as long as you give it the right conditions, which I finally did. So the next video I upload on these will be about pasteurizing the grain, which is straw, which is what I will be using the gypsum for. I gotta fit all these back in here and hope the lid is gonna close. I think I did it. All right. Keep an eye out for some updates. Much love, everyone. I will talk to you all soon. Oh shit, I peeked at the card. It's in here. Good luck. Just as a reminder, if you want to win this, you got to be subbed, number one. And number two, you only get one guess. So, good luck.